So, can Leonard Betts' head or thumb grow a new body? And what creepy details are there in these shots of him growing a new head? This video answers these and other interesting questions related to the X-Files Season 4, Episode 12. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and support the video with your activity. This means a lot for me. This story began when Michelle was once again surprised by her colleague Leonard's ability to accurately diagnose a patient. Yes, Leonard has a talent for identifying people's illness just by looking at them, especially when it comes to oncology. But Michelle really shouldn't have been distracted from the road, as this led to a serious car accident. An accident in which Leonard died. There was no chance of saving him as his head was severed from his body. Leonard's remains would be taken to the morgue. Later that night in the morgue, someone knocks out the attendant and takes his clothes, and Leonard Betts' body disappears. But we already know that no one stole it. The decapitated body itself decided to knock out the attendant and leave the morgue, and the interference of the surveillance camera photos won't allow us to notice that. When Mulder and Scully arrive at the medical facility, they'll find Leonard Betts' head among organic waste, and Scully will rush to do what she loves most: autopsy and investigation. From the very beginning, everything is strange about this head. Scully notes that despite a considerable time has passed since death, the tissues of the head show no signs of rigor mortis, changes in the corneas, and so on. But Scully will be really shocked when the head starts to show signs of life. In general, always skeptical, Scully will think that this is just residual bioelectrical impulses in Betts' tissues. However, Scully was surprised that she couldn't perform a tomography on Betts' remains. Every time the images come out blurry, as if they emit some kind of radiation. The agents will seek help from a specialist who practices a new method of tissue examination through polymerization and layer-by-layer dissection. But even there, the results of the examination initially seem doubtful. They show that Leonard Betts' brain was completely ravaged by cancer cells. At this point, it's nothing but one big malignant tumor. With such level of brain damage, he should have died a long time ago. Mulder insists on making another one, somewhat more experimental examination. His old acquaintance claims to be able to use high-frequency currents to capture an aura snapshot of Leonard Betts' remains, or what is called chi energy in some cultures. Of course, Scully does not approve of this. The aura snapshot of Leonard Betts' head shows that it still retains energy information about its former body, and this is exactly why all shots had interference. After this, Mulder will introduce Scully to his main theory regarding Leonard Betts, which he'll develop throughout the episode. The essence of the theory is as follows: what if Leonard Betts' tissues, severely affected by cancer, are not a destructive factor but rather a normal state of his body? Cancer is an abnormal growth of normal cells with damage to their DNA structure. There are some scientific theories suggesting that cancer is a failed, broken attempt of evolution to create a tissue regeneration mechanism in humans, similar to that of reptiles and amphibians. What if Leonard Betts is that very human, or perhaps no longer even a human, in whom evolution managed to make this biological mechanism work correctly? According to the show's scientific consultant, Betts' secret is a special connection between immune system and cell growth. Mulder theorizes of what could be called reactive evolution, where evolution introduces into the biology of a given organism something that may not have worked for thousands of years in previous generations. After the incident in the morgue, Mulder managed to visit Leonard Betts' home and discovered a bathtub filled with a mixture of water and povidone iodine. This substance is used to accelerate tissue regeneration in reptiles and amphibians. So what if Leonard Betts could also regenerate his lost body parts? And that very energy aura around Betts' remains serves as a pattern for regenerating lost body parts. So what if his abilities have gone so far that he can even regenerate a new head? You know, something no animal is capable of. Of course, Scully doesn't like any of this, as usual, but deep down she knows that Mulder turns out to be right 8 times out of 10. More than that, having left Betts' apartment earlier, Mulder did not see how a new, just grown head of Leonard Betts emerged from the povidone iodine bath, with its not fully formed skin and hair covering. The agents discovered that a man with exactly the same fingerprints as Betts and with exactly the same appearance, called Albert Tanner, died 6 years ago in a car accident. Leonard's former colleague, Michelle, hears by the radio said that a man with exactly the same voice as Leonard's works at another hospital. She finds him. It really turns out to be Leonard, working there under another name. She is happy to see him, but he is not. Leonard kills Michelle with an injection of potassium chloride. A police officer apprehends Leonard by handcuffing him to a car, but Leonard escapes by tearing off his thumb. In the morning, Mulder and Scully will find a lot of medical organic waste which are in fact excised cancer tumors in Betts' car trunk. It is at this moment that the agents realize, well at least Mulder certainly does, that these cancer tumors are nothing but food for Leonard Betts, which he needs for his extraordinary abilities to function. Soon we'll see Leonard sitting in a bar, examining his forming thumb. He does not have access to food supplies. He needs strength. He needs a victim. So he apologizes when approaching a man with a scalpel, because the latter happens to have just what he needs. Later we'll learn what it is, the cancer-affected left lung. Then we'll see hands down the most famous scene from the episode. I'd say it's in the conversation for the most famous scene from the X-Files ever. Leonard is in a rented storage unit. He is nervous, scared, in pain, but he's clearly ready for something terrifying. His pain becomes unbearable as something appears at the top of his back and under his skin, starting to push its way further up to his neck, tearing it and his mouth from the inside, coming out. Yes, Leonard Betts has grown a new head in the scene in order to create his new copy. And now I'll read out some excerpts from the novelization of the episode related to this scene. He felt terrible, only God knows how terrible. Pain, an acute, sharp, piercing pain. Nausea. He always felt it, but it never came out, making it even harder to bear. How many times had he wanted to kill himself because he couldn't stand such a life, because he wanted to be like everyone else, but couldn't do it. In those moments, he always tried to distract himself, to deaden the pain. It was coming, gathering from all over his body, from every cell, bringing unbearable pain. It gathered into a lump inside him. The most painful part came. The huge lump from his body started rising up his throat. Leonard always wondered how he stayed alive after that. Finally, the lump burst out, tearing his lips apart because it simply couldn't fit through his narrow mouth. In a second, it was over. The new head looked around, while the old one was thrown back like an unnecessary hood of a raincoat after the rain. When Mulder and Scully arrive at the storage unit, they will face resistance. After they open the storage unit, a car driven by Leonard Betts will try to run them over. The agents will shoot at the car's gas tank, and Leonard's body will burn during the explosion. It'll be delivered to the morgue, together with Albert Tanner's body, who also burnt in a car accident 6 years ago. It's easy to see that they look like twins. Mulder is sure that Leonard Betts is still alive and that the explosion at the storage unit was just a diversion. He convinces Scully once again that even Leonard Betts' head is capable of growing a complete new body, not just vice versa. Regeneration of an entire organism, that's how Mulder puts it. In the novelization, Scully asks Mulder, can a thumb then grow a new body? And we get no direct answer. But based on the overall artistic context, we understand that yes, it can. However, there are some nuances. In order for a small part of the body to be able to regenerate the rest, it needs some very specific external conditions, at least an environment with povidone iodine. The head that was taken to the morgue and the thumb left in the parking lot did not have these conditions. Although these body parts, as we understand, still had the potential for regenerating the whole body for some time. And now let's discuss what technically happened in that storage unit. That is, what exactly was it that grew into another copy of Leonard Betts? There is once again no direct answer to this, but the new copy either grew from the old head, shed like a hood of a raincoat, or Leonard Betts shed not only his old head but also the entirety of his old body, which later regenerated itself. Yes, we assume that Leonard could create the necessary conditions for the successful growth of his copy in the storage unit. And formally speaking, the Leonard Betts who leaves the storage unit unharmed and goes to his mother is indeed a copy, but let's return to this a bit later. Mother takes care of Leonard, who's sitting in a bathtub with povidone iodine. He is weak and his mother is ready to give her child what he needs, a sarcoma, which Leonard will cut out from his mother's body, keeping her alive. In conclusion, Leonard will attempt to attack Scully, since she also has what he needs, much to her horror. Scully will kill Leonard with a defibrillator shock to his head. Leonard Betts' death will be confirmed, but of course, we understand that such a thing can hardly kill Leonard Betts. And most likely, this is yet another one of his copies. There are many more of them than our agents suspected. We already know that he regularly went through the painful process of creating a new copy. Leonard had been covering his tracks for years, And speaking of who's a copy and who's the real Leonard Betts, my opinion is that here we have a shared phantom energy connection between all of his copies, the same thing that Flukeman had. There will be a link to the video about him at the end of this one. To some extent, this can be called a collective consciousness. After all, if we listen closely to Mulder's initial idea about the nature of Betts' abilities, he says that his cancer is merely a tool for regeneration, while his less comprehensible energy structure is much more unexplored. But one way or another, Leonard Betts' story is not a story of eternal hunger. It's a story about how releasing a scary episode after the Super Bowl is not a bad idea. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel and support it with your activity. It means a lot to me.